The Immersion Foundation presents deep conversation with ambassadors on the cutting edge of combative arts as part of a greater mission to revive the study of hopology through research, expeditions, and archival projects around the world. The Immersion Foundation combines rigorous academic research with hands-on immersion in the combative arts and elite performance training, forging a new path of growth, adventure, and contribution.
Okay. Hey, super Chris. Good to be back. Hoping this is a start of a series around this idea of liberation and what the hell does that mean and how does one go about it. But keep this rooted within our love of martial arts and making sure that, hey, these are not, as you and I were talking offline, it's not, nice memes or nice quotes that I post and have no idea what it means, but it becomes a framework on how we live, right?
Right.
So I think if we can start, like, okay, liberation. What are you liberating from and what are you liberating towards? Because we don't know that pathway. There is no way for us to move forward. So I know that whole article with the classical mess, that was the genesis of a lot of people beginning to rethink, but would love your thoughts on this idea of, hey, what's dogma? What are you liberating from and what are you liberating towards?
Well, again, dogma to me is anything that is a restrictive, this is the way we must do this, this is the way we must think about this. This is the way we must act. Where that becomes a set way, and to step outside of that is to go against the grain, so to speak. So that, again, that's the easy. Anytime anything gets too complicated, and I like to use the term concretized, then you have the chance of running into that idea of dogma. It now becomes, groupthink or group mentality and things like that. So that's always been the thing for me with regards to with dogma, right? I don't know if that is your question. It's just, I don't have like dictionary definitions of it.
No.
But that's the thing. It's sort of like it has to be this way, whether it be religious dogma, whether it be political dogma, whether it be social dogma, it's something that, no, it has to be this way. You have to think about it this way. Don't go outside of this periphery of seeing things. That's the thing for me with dogma. A concretized, a solidified idea, which again goes against everything that we do. So.
Yeah. So, in your perspective, 5+ decades of doing the martial arts and testing this out, how do you see this this begin to manifest in people, even when they use the words liberation, and even when they talk about quote unquote JKD and Bruce Lee?
Well, again, you said about liberation, and liberation is freedom, freeing oneself from whatever it is. When you're talking about liberation, it can be a liberation from anything. It can be liberation from something external, again, society, an individual, a political groupthink. It can be something, internal, liberation from your own solidified beliefs or your own again, dogmatic way of thinking or acting. So liberation can apply to anything, and it can be mental, it can be physical, it can be emotional. Yeah, right. Again, as I said, the sources may be external or they may be internal. So that is what you're seeking to liberate. Anything that has become or is an impediment to your personal growth, an obstacle to you moving forward or doing what you want to do, anything that is restrictive in any way. It's liberating yourself from that, which is why in JKD, Bruce often used the idea of chains, right? Because chains, you can still move when you're in chains. Sometimes. I mean, sometimes the chains are completely restrictive, right? They deny you movement at all. But often you can move in chains, but you can't move with complete freedom. And so that's one of the reasons why Bruce Lee used the analogy of chains. You still have movement, but you don't have complete freedom of movement from a martial perspective. When you're talking of it from the martial art aspect, liberation can be, again, from dogmatic ways of doing things, techniques, actions. It can be dogmatic ways of thinking. I have to think this way all of the time, because why? Well, because that's the way I was taught. That's the way my teacher taught me. That's the way the system teaches me. And again, Bruce Lee was an individual who just walked up and says, whoa, 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 let's just forget about all this crap and take a look at it, If a person's not careful, anything can become a way, even like kind of like you said, liberation. Some people can be so caught up in liberating themselves from everything that they miss the big picture, So again, I don't know if that kind of answers the question.
Yes, it does. I mean, I think we're grappling with some big questions. There's not going to be an easy way to just have a dictionary answer, as you said.
Yeah. That nice, neat little package. Again, it's and that is what so many people want, as we said. Whether it's society, and I think it's been that way all along. I don't think it's something new or something 20th century. Everybody wants the answer. Bang, and they want it put in some nice, neat little package. Okay, that looks good and that works, but life is not that way for us, and so the path or the journey to liberation is not that way. Again, you cannot have. Okay, this is the way. I guarantee you that if you take this course, that in 3 weeks you're going to be liberated from everything that is going to hold you back. It doesn't work that way, and then I also love to apply that the Zen saying about before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After you attain alignment, chop wood, carry water. This is the same thing, if you liberate yourself from one thing or another thing, it's a continual process. It's not, I wake up and I'm liberated, so hell, it's all over, So.
Yeah. I think this putting into boxes and having this sense of control is why I think people get caught up in dogma, and this illusion of control and this illusion of mastery then takes them down a crazy rabbit hole. I think one of the things that both you and I have briefly spoken about, and something that Mark Mikita and I have spoken about quite a bit, for example, is our favorite box pattern, and how what was meant to be a tool essentially became a prison and a whole way of testing. I would love your thoughts on that, especially with this idea of liberation and getting out of that dogma, and what freedom in that context would be.
My thoughts regarding like the box pattern or whatever is that?
Yeah, the Sumbrada box pattern.
well, again, as I said, from my background, I understand and I recognize when it was developed, how it was developed, and why it was developed, and that it was developed so that when Dan Inosanto was doing a seminar, and you're spending 5 hours a day with people, and maybe half of it at that time, half of it would be on JKD, and half of it would be on the Filipino martial arts. So you're sharing with people, and maybe back in the days, the earliest days, there was 100, 150 people at these seminars. So you're showing them the basic counters or deflections or blocks for various angles of attack. So then the idea is, okay, but how do I get them to achieve or get even a feeling of a state of flow as to what it may be like, in a combative situation? Because as we know, it's not about, 24 different hits, clack, 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 clack. It's like bang, 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 somebody gets hit or goes down. So how do we take that and give that 100 people the experience of a state of flow? And that's always been a big thing with Jeet Kune Do, even be it on seminars or teaching. It is about giving students experiences. So you teach them these basic things. Okay. Now, how do you get them to this state of flow? Well, Dan created a basic pattern of deflections, right? And I like to use the term, it's like you and I want to learn to play tennis. So we understand what the forehand is, we understand what the backhand is, and the overhand lob, and we know how to serve. But we don't want to just go bang, I hit it to you, and then we stop, and bang, you hit it to me. So what we do is we set up a rally back and forth, which allows us to practice our backhands and our footwork and move with our forehands. And we don't care if it goes out of bounds right now, or maybe it bounces twice. But what we don't want to do is interrupt that state of flow. So, and again, Dan being a physical education teacher, taking that approach and moving it into, or his coaching approach. So he developed this patternized thing. And what it does is, as you know, it flows into each other. So side A becomes side B, and side B becomes side A. And it works for its initial purpose. But that purpose then became dogmatic in that's what everybody did all of the time. And they never moved outside of it. So it became, like, as you said, very dogmatic. Bang, 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 bang. And then people get faster and faster and faster. And they think, this is really cool because I can go super fast at it. But it is taking this alive idea of this counter for counter, which is why I like that term much better, almost counter for counter, and putting in this nice, neat little package, and then everybody takes the package to be the thing, and so they never go out of it. So as I said, I did not learn it that way. I never learned the box pattern when I learned Sombrata. That was something that came along later down the road. For me, it was, again, like playing tennis. Or the other analogy is, I ask you a question. You answer the question. Now you ask me a question. I answer. So it becomes question, answer. And that's only the first stage or first level, because then we start adding in double hits and triple hits and fakes and broken rhythm timing and moving distances from long range to intermediate range to close range, So that's where it's going. That's where it's supposed to go. The question is, does it ever get there? Or does, like we said, I think my biggest thing of ever seeing that was, and I think we talked about this before, was seeing a sci-fi movie that Jean-Claude Van Damme did. I forget the name of it, but a lot of the guys were doing stunt. Yeah, stunt work at the time. A lot of the Innocento guys were doing it. Good guys, all of them, right? Friends of mine, training partners. Yeah. So as you're watching this mass fight go on, I'm sitting there because of my background, and I'm seeing two people over there doing the box pattern with like sticks. Two people over there doing the box pattern with like blades. This guy's doing it with an axe versus a sword. And I'm going box pattern, box pattern, box pattern. And I understand, again, that was for a movie, but that became the thing. And so, again, that's where it becomes this dogmatic approach to doing it, So, so that, like I said, that's where the box pattern had a use, right? But you get caught up in it. A lot of times when I'm teaching, I can devise ideas on the spot to create a state of flow. And sometimes they flow back and forth and sometimes they don't. But, for me, it's kind of like, well, maybe we'll go here, maybe we'll go here, maybe we'll go here. And some styles, I think, because we've done all the research, some styles, some of their sparring, it's almost like 1 for 1. And then the feeder gives you 2 and you counter that and you give 1. And then they give you 3 and you counter that and give 1. So, it almost becomes like 1-step sparring and 2-step sparring and 3-step sparring. It's an approach, but it's not the approach that I grew up in. So again, it becomes, here's your nice, neat little package. So you understand that,
So I guess it begs the natural question then. Maybe we'll just stick with Sumbrada today as a metaphor as we go through this, as to once we have these tools or a set of tools, a set of patterns, then what is the path towards finding that liberation? Because that's the central theme of what we're looking to explore.
Right. Well, again, it is where you go at the beginning. It's like when years ago I did I'm going off into JKD, but I did a JKD pyramid, and the design is not important, quite honestly, but the point is the shape of what builds upon what, that the base is your on guard fighting positions and your footwork, and then your tool development, and then your things like timing and distance and rhythm. So it's getting narrower as it gets towards the top. That applies just as much to whether you're doing Sumbrada or what. Is that, as I said, you can break down, and different teachers break it down into different levels. For me, it's helping my students move from in a state of flow from dealing with simple attacks to dealing with compound attacks, and then attacking with simple attacks and compound attacks, things of that nature. So I've got to be able to go outside and sometimes change the lines, and sometimes throw a student off by, it might be a line I might not use combatively, but I need to get them to the framework of being able to deal with it. So I will do something and suddenly change the angle on it. But you can only move to liberation if you have the tools that allow you to move to liberation. And this is something that's often tools are skills, and whether you're talking about martial arts or life, with that is there are certain tools and skills and qualities that are, I don't think they're prerequisites. I think a better word might be they're co-requisites, because because you can be doing it as you're moving along, but how can you liberate yourself or free yourself in Sumbrada if you don't have the basics? Again, your mind is going to be stopping and is it here? Is it here? So having worked with not only Dan, but people like Angel Caballas and Manon Leo Heron, and meeting people like Johnny Lacosta, and seeing how, like, when you're initially taught those ABCs, those initial deflections, okay, well, if your stick is up, it's one thing. If a diagonal forehand is coming in, well, if your stick is up is one thing, but if your stick is down, it's something else. If your stick is over on that side, it's something else. And if there's a wall there and you're up against the wall, then you're not going to be going that way. So you start building their abilities to use that, right? Then you move into that flow state. There are prerequisites for flow state are a good understanding and command of the tools and skills that you're going to use. Because like I said, all of a sudden, here comes this blow at your head and your weapon is down and you're thinking, or you've only been taught how to use, for example, an inside sweep type deflection, and now the weapon is down and here it comes and you're trying to get there and bang, you're hit. So again, it is a process, and it is that's why the whole thing, JKD is a process, martial art is a process. Learning the Filipino martial arts, it is a process. It is not a product. There is no end point to it. So even with the sombrada, and that's why I said is how you choose. Here's where they are. Here's where you want them to be. Right? They don't, like I said, they don't know anything about sombrada. They don't know this. You want to be able to flow in and out, deal with different types of weapons, all of that, characteristics. How do you get them from there to there? That is a process, but it also cannot be a dogmatic process. Or again, everybody like for a short while I did Shotokan karate, just for a very brief time. Then I got a knee injury playing soccer when I was in Santa Monica, and at the time everybody's head had to be the exact same height when you were like in the stance, whatever they call it. Now the teacher was like 5'5", and then you got somebody who's 6 foot or 6'2", but his head everybody had to be the same height. Well, why? Now it's again dogma, right? Got to be that height. Got to be this way. So again, as I said, when you're looking, it doesn't matter whether it's the Filipino, it doesn't matter whether it's JKD. It's taking a dogmatic approach. This is the way. Again, there is no way. And if you listen to the phone conversation where Daniel Lee is talking with Bruce Lee in the time, right? Bruce says right there on the audio tape, that is why I disbanded all of the schools of Jeet Kune Do, because it is too easy for a student to come in and take the program as the way, or the agenda as the truth, program as the truth, whatever it is, and the agenda as the way. That's what people like to do. I think that's human nature. We all want that. Show me, give it to me. And it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, they want surety. They want, again, that illusion of control so that they know that they're moving towards it, whatever that is, rather than dealing with uncertainty.
I think that's always been a thing why I drew something actually from an amazing book. I find an amazing book called Surfing with Sartre, and it's the man who wrote the book. I've got his name. I don't have it off the top of my head. Taught philosophy at one of the top University of California, but is an avid surfer, and so he relates again philosophy and surfing and this stuff. And one of the things he said in there, which really struck home with me, and so again, this is JKD, man. I can absorb what's useful, right? Was like when you're surfing, there's a lot of things you can't control, So you replace control with consciousness. So that's an approach that I take in what we're even talking about now. As you said, everyone wants to. Well, let's be conscious of it. Let's not try and control everything because you can't. Right? That's here's the 6 steps you must take that are going to achieve, complete mental liberation from you. It doesn't work. So
I think something you hit upon, maybe it'll be a great place to expand, going to this JKD pyramid that you spoke about, because I think, again, that lays out a process of moving from fundamentals to a narrower point towards that actualization, if you will. Would love for you to expand on that, Chris, if that
On the
works.
pyramid?
Yes.
Well, again, as I said, and I don't know where maybe the idea of the pyramid came because of the Filipinos, and Dan had so many pyramids going on. But again, if you look at the design of the pyramid, right, it has a wide functional base, and then it moves narrow towards the top. So at the top of that pyramid, I have, again, all out sparring, complete freedom, and things like that. But at the base, so like I said, the base are the foundations upon which you build, and this could apply to excuse me, any martial art. For example, my very good friend Greg Smith, who is out in Ohio, who I've worked with for years, and was very involved with the Bruce Lee Foundation, was in Kempo, and they had to write like a thesis for their masters, for their black belt, to write like a thesis for it. Well, he told me, and we even talked about, he actually wrote his thesis about my JKD pyramid because he felt it applied even with, in the Kempo. So as I said, it's having the base, and each thing which builds upon that base. How can you work footwork if you don't have a base from which to develop? Okay, how can you control the distance if you don't have footwork, or rhythm and tools? Okay, so if you build the tools, right? Again, you can't move. You could build that pyramid and people leave out chunks of the pyramid, but then you end up with a very wobbly, unstable pyramid. So it was just a design for me, for my thinking, like when we're talking about like the mind maps and things like that, of okay, so all of these things go together, and as you're moving, it's getting narrower and narrower because they're all coming together, right? And essential qualities. And then at the peak of that pyramid is, all out sparring, if you will, with complete freedom, as much as we can, because we always and this, there's certain things that irritate me in the martial art world and the JKD world, and there's all this, total all out sparring. You cannot have. There's no such thing. Even in MMA, they have rules. Even in the octagon, they have rules. It's like in the Filipino martial arts. Well, okay, we're going to understand we're going to work on knife fighting, so we're going to understand what it's really like. So here's a 12-inch butcher knife, and I'm going to have a 12-inch butcher knife, and we're just going to go because that's what it's going to be like. What are we going to learn? How to dial 911, right? We may get killed. So this idea of complete all out, I think, is a fallacy that people like to imagine, because the brutality of it is like the brutality of actual war in which people die. So the idea was to approach it as close as possible. Yeah. So this pyramid for me was just a diagram of these are the building blocks. And so that's why the pyramid works. They're building blocks that you use to create. And that's why I said it wouldn't have to be a pyramid. That's just my design. But if you leave out chunks of, like leaving out chunks of the architecture of a building, you can still have a building, but
won't work right.
Yeah, won't work right. Or a vehicle, right? Well, we got all these parts. Did you leave out the shock absorbers? I didn't think we needed that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How about the brakes? Oh, yeah. We skipped by those. Same idea.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So, for Chris, I'm wondering if, as an initial start, give an overview of your 6 principles that you've laid out on this liberation map, if you will. I'm just using that word map loosely, but
Oh my God, I would actually have to grab the book just because my mind doesn't think that way. I can grab it if you want.
yeah,
Hold
sure,
on. This
sure.
is right here. So
Just so that people,
sure. Yeah.
when they
Well.
start listening and buy a book, they're like, man,
Yeah. Well. Again,
from
it's like the so again, when I initially wrote it, right, I focused on just the split, the mental cultivation and the physical cultivation. But when I rewrote it, I wanted to go in greater depth and expand it out. So, there, I laid it out, I designed it where you have um, the primary principles, right? Which there's basically 7 of them, and those are the overarching principles. And then under that, you have a number of sub principles. But they're all interrelated and interconnected. So the first principle is about expressing your own unique potential as an individual, as a human being, in whatever you're doing. And then there are sub principles that go with that. That you've got to know yourself. I mean, self knowledge is the core for liberation of anything. Because if you don't know yourself, how are you going to liberate? How are you going to know what you need to liberate from? So it, included things like knowing yourself, and then striving to actualize yourself, right? And that each one of us has our own story. Your job is to be your own story. So again, principle 1 was express your own unique potential. You've got to know yourself. You've got to understand yourself. You've got to be yourself. The second principle, the second fundamental principle, was about maintaining a thirst for knowledge and understanding. That you've got to keep learning. You've got to keep growing. Bruce, as I said, was a learning machine. Oftentimes, people will kind of shut down. They reach a particular point and things like that. So, again, maintaining a thirst for knowledge is about you seeking truth for yourself, discovering, just seeking it, finding it, checking it out. It's about finding the cause of your ignorance. Like I said, these are all sub principles that would take an entire chapter or whatever, which they do, just to talk about that. Using I when I did my TED talk, I called it a dynamic prescription for personal growth. To research your own experience, absorb, reject, right? Add what's your own. Which, as we know, and I think you even talked about it, actually doesn't come from Bruce so much. It comes from Mao Zedong, right? So again, express your unique potential, maintain a thirst for knowledge and understanding, maintain fluidity of both your thinking and your acting. So again, this is where the be like water comes in. Emptying your cup, being willing to throw things out so that you can allow new things in, being willing to change with change, right? The old saying, to change with change is to remain changeless. So those are all subcategories. Being ready, willing, and able. This goes back to you've got to have tools. You've got to have performance tools and skills, and no matter what you are doing, be it a martial artist, be it a musician, be it a chef. So it's about what are those tools? And as I said, we literally you'd just go through and spend time on each different one. Principle 5: get in the water. Life is not a spectator sport, right? So as I was saying, you can stand at the edge of the pool all day long, right? Wondering what it's like. Again, the great Alan Watts talked about very much that, and Bruce was an adamant admirer of Alan Watts. So you can think about water, what it's going to be like, what it's going to feel like. You can stand there practicing. Oh, this is the breaststroke. You got to get in the water. Bang. So And that was always a fundamental thing about the sparring in JKD. How do you know what works and what doesn't work until you get in the water? And that goes back to the principle or the idea is, again, to manifest. I mean, to theorize on something is wonderful, it's great, but can you manifest it? Can you do it? So all of those, right? Principle 6 was adapt. I just used that term, adapt like a shadow, respond like an echo. That is all about cultivating your abilities to fit in and adapt. Again, adaptability is the highest quality a martial artist can possess. So it is about how we develop the ability to fit in. It is about this is where so much of the martial art component really comes out, because now you're dealing with things like counterattack, defensive skills, and countering, as we said, is not just countering a physical attack; it's countering anything. Somebody who's attempting to hold you back from doing something. So, and then each one of those, and the 7th principle was just keep blasting, walking through. Those are the fundamental things. So it's like I said, they all interconnect. So to me, they're like links on a chain. They don't sit separate. They're all interconnected, and they flow back and forth. Which is why when I rewrote it, I did it that way. Was because a lot of the mental and the physical principles, they transfer back and forth. And this allowed me more time to just go into greater depth and spend more time, and the idea is, okay, we're talking about like the book and, find over these principles. Yes, the title of the book is Liberate Yourself, How to Think Like Bruce Lee. The original title was different. I rewrote this because I wanted to spend more time going through the ideas, but I'm also, understand the, I understand the business side of things, and I understand that if somebody's walking through a Barnes and Noble bookstore and they see a book that says "Liberate Yourself: A Guide to Freedom," okay, yeah. But if they see How to Think Like Bruce Lee, bang. So I understand that, and so that was, I admit that was part of the
Trojan horse.
Yes. Yeah, because if they don't read the book, they're not going to get the material. So exactly, So like I said, so the idea was here's fundamental principles, or those are the overarching connecting ones, right? And then there's all the other ones. Be like water, harmoniously interfuse yin yang, all of those. But they're all simply used, or they're for the reader to look at and again say, how can I apply this to me? And then they still have to do the work for it. And this came because this was the approach to martial art. This was the approach to JKD. For me, was okay, understanding that. And, as I think we've talked before, I've been wanting to do this book probably for 25 years before I did it, because it just was struck such a resonant chord. And finally, I told you, it was John, I think I told you, it was John Little, who, when he was up here, he goes, look, Chris, you just got to do this. Just got so I did it, yeah. And then again, now we're talking about it. So, but again, from my perspective is from, let's really see how we're going to work this out. So I don't care if you're a musician. I don't care if you're a surgeon. These principles apply no matter what you are doing. And it comes from, let's make sure it works. We're not going to, here's a bunch of, like we said, here's a bunch of nice little ideas. This book means nothing if a person doesn't do the work. Look, we know that self-help books are one of the biggest,
bestsellers.
sellers, just like right behind cookbooks, or maybe with cookbooks, because that's what people want to do, and people's libraries are filled with them. I mean, I have a large selection of them, but it's, what do you want to use it for? And so that was the thing. The quote on Bruce's headstone, which is where the thing about personal liberation came from. Yeah, it guides you towards it. So it is a guide. Yeah, it's a guide, not a guard. It offers you a fluid set of operating principles. But I think one of the fundamental things is kind of like we were talking about, because of philosophy, it's all a matter of philosophy. And we all use philosophy whether we think we do or we don't. Every single person uses it. Every single person has a personal philosophy that they operate from in their daily life. Yeah. So is that philosophy working for you, or is it not working for you? Again, that was the impetus. And if it's not working, can we create, or can you create a new philosophical framework that will work for you? Yeah. So this, like I said, Liberate Yourself is just about sharing ideas for somebody to help them create a new philosophical framework, a new philosophical perspective, if you will. And then you still have to do the work. So,
Yeah, I hear you, and I agree with you. I think as we were speaking earlier, maybe bring that question up now. That philosophical framework is always present, whether you're conscious of it or not. And these become tools for you to become conscious, to say, hey, is this working for me, not working for me? And if it's not working, what do I change, or how do I optimize? And also, what am I aiming towards, and how do I get there? But you got to do the work. I would love your thoughts on that, especially on both the JKD and FMA paths that we all take, and say, okay, we're moving there. What are we moving towards? And how do we test this out? Because in the absence of testing, nice quotes. Yeah, Bruce Lee said that.
Nice
but
theories.
So what? Yeah.
Well, again, I'm trying to go back to what you were just saying, because my mind was thinking about something, but about the liberation, right? My job, I'll just relate to what I do, right? My job as a martial art teacher, it is not to me, because Jeet is not to me about the perpetuation of a style. We've talked about this. It is about the cultivation of an individual as a martial artist. Okay. So my goal is to help them, not turn them into, but help them become what I refer to as creative, liberated martial artists, which means that they're liberated. They're not locked in to, this is the style, this is the way that I have to do things. And then I approach it from a scientific biomechanic point of view as well, as we're looking like that. But, again, it is about the individual, their physical structure, their psychological nature. So, if we take one person and they're moving towards liberation, as you said, the first thing is you've got to learn about yourself and know about yourself. How can you liberate yourself if you don't know yourself? Right? So knowing yourself is this way, not that way. Right? Everybody wants to look outwards for it. No. So it's, in order to liberate yourself, you've got to know yourself. You've got to know how you think about things, how you feel. That's the starting point. It's the core to move to self-liberation. And then as you learn, or as you know about yourself, this aspect of myself is restricting me in some way. So can I get rid of it? Can I change that? And most times the answer is yes. If it's no, then, if it's a physical structure thing, then is there a way in which I can move around that? Then, be it over or under, or work with it. So, yeah. So where are you going when you're talking about, okay, I'm a liberated martial artist. What does that mean? It means that you're an individual who thinks for themselves, has the capacity to look, analyze, choose to use something, choose to not use something. You know your psychological nature so well. I've said oftentimes that becomes so important because everybody, so often you hear JKD is all about fighting. It's all about fighting. It's all about fighting. No, it's not. Fighting is a part of it, and an important part, because as you said, it's not a bunch of nice little memes. It's taking it out on the floor. But what is your psychological nature? And is it hardwired into your DNA? If you're hardwired that you are not an aggressive, assertive person, you'll do things that are necessary, like you'll protect yourself, but you're not super aggressive and super assertive. Then for me to try and turn you into this kick blast, straight blast, it's not going to work. It's going to frustrate you. It's going to frustrate me. So the self-knowledge is, who am I? What am I? What is my nature like? And then, as I said, I can maybe I've got to physically liberate myself from a lack of flexibility. Okay, that lack of flexibility is serving as an impediment to what I want to do. Can I liberate myself from it, and how do I do it? And then that's the process. I think I said when we were talking before that when I began in JKD, because of wearing orthodontal work for several years, and my parents telling me, don't get hit in the mouth, it's lost a lot of money, that I would hit looking away, and I paid the price for it. That was an impediment for me, and I had to look at that and face that and do the work necessary to move past that. So that is a form of liberating myself from that restriction. So again, it's I don't know. I just find it so easy, so simple, that when sometimes people, they want to complicate it so much, and anything that's standing in your way, okay, how do I remove it? My own self-consciousness is our own self-consciousness is the biggest one. So how do we, liberate ourselves from that? Yeah.
So one last question for today.
Mhm.
So essentially, what it comes down to is being iconoclasm and being extremely iconoclastic, and yeah, it's about liberation. Is you keep finding those things that get in your way and work around it, break through it, climb over it, whatever it is. How do you move around it? So would love your thoughts around that, and we'll set it up for the next one after this.
Okay. Well, again, as you said, like, it's not about thinking outside the box. To me, it's about shattering the box, getting rid. It's not about pushing the envelope. It's about not even recognizing that there's an envelope there. You find that out afterwards, right? That thing about, you just keep, every day. When I use Bruce Lee as an example, every day he was pushing his own boundaries to see if those to see where they were, and things like that.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it's an ongoing process, and it never changes. I mean, there is no end to it. There is no end to it. So, but can you use it as a martial artist? I think so.
Yeah.
I think it is, because now, again, like we said, you're not You're not concerned with things like style and systems and things like that. It's not you don't like them; you've just transcended them. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, talking to my daughter, she's 7. I was trying to explain this, and it's a little harder, and it actually I think it makes me a better teacher trying to explain some of these ideas to her. So she's like, "What do you mean? This is right and that is right too?" I said,
Yes.
"Okay, how do we go there?" So I said, "Hey, it's about being where the problem is not," and it just clicked.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for her, so she's like, "Oh, you mean somebody does this, I can be anywhere as long as I'm not getting hit?" I said, "Yeah, be where the problem's not." So she keeps repeating that, be where the
Yeah.
problem is not. And it essentially, I said, "Yeah, actually, you got it better than I could explain it." But yeah, that's the essence of it.
Well, again, you reduced it, or you brought it down to its the simplest, clearest terms that worked at that particular time for
Yes.
for your daughter. Yeah. Again, you can't take even your daughter. She's 7. You can't go and see. You need complete personal liberation.
No.
What I mean. Oh, you have to find out. Again, there's a process that they go through.
Yes.
The difficult part is not allowing whatever it is, organizations, society, to start making it where you have to do that.
It shouldn't become the box itself.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
and kids are, sometimes they see things in a much simpler way.
Yes.
Because they don't have all that baggage. They don't have all those chains thrown on them yet. And your daughter's 7, mine is going to be 30. But I tried to raise her with the idea of not putting those chains on her. So kind of like you said, it's like, well, what is this? Well, in school they say this. Okay, I don't follow that frame of thinking. Like we said, and then explaining why, and just doing like I said, what you have to do. I think kids are very good at teaching us. So
Yes.
we're so busy, thinking we've got to teach them. And sometimes kids can teach us compassion. Kids can teach us love. Kids can teach us acceptance and tolerance. Which we had as when we were kids, and then for whatever reason,
Lost it somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's like I said, that's the thing with JKD, and we're not talking about just the physical art, but JKD is just to bring you back to yourself, your true self, not the one that's got all the crap thrown on it and stuff. Who you truly are, and when we recognize that, now, like I said, now we don't get caught in that dogma, or a dogmatic approach to doing things, and away. So I think you just real before we close, you mentioned too that sometimes people can become so enmeshed in attempting to liberate themselves that they actually restrict themselves. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. You're so busy trying to liberate yourself that you get yourself all locked up in these other chains.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point. Is It's, there's again that book, Surfing with Sartre, is no, this was another one, but it was don't leave waves to find waves. Because some people are always, I got to get better wave. I got to find a better way. This, like I said, some people, they got to go and they got to do this course. I've got to do this course, and I've got to get my certifications, and we have become, I don't know. My feeling is we have become a massively over credentialized society. So you can get a Pilates certificate in a weekend. You can get a yoga certificate in a weekend. You can get a physical conditioning coach in a weekend. And so now I've got these 26 different certificates on the wall. Okay, but how much of it, kind of like you said, so you've got this massive breadth of all of these things, but you've got the depth of a pie tin in terms of your deep knowledge, you know? So, yeah.
Well, my favorite things is like say, certificates. Yeah, somebody else's opinion on what they think you can do. It doesn't reflect
Yes.
what you know and what you can do.
Yeah, exactly. You know, Dan said years ago that kind of related to that was the fact that because he was relating it to martial arts and belts and ranking systems, and he says, there's a lot of people out there that have the knowledge, have the skills because they've educated themselves and they've developed themselves, but they didn't have the time, didn't have the money, or didn't have the inclination to jump through all of the hoops that were required to get that certificate or to get that particular belt. But they have the knowledge and they have the skills, but people look and they go, well, they don't have that. And Bruce Lee is I think the supreme example of that, because I hear people all the time and when we're talking belts and credentials, and I always love to go, so you think that Bruce Lee was a pretty good martial artist? Oh yeah, he was the best. He like, you think he's really good? Oh yeah. He never had a belt. He never had a ranking system. He never had a title in any art. So what does that tell you? Oh yeah, that's not it. Yeah. I think that's supremely important. Like you said, yeah. The world is filled. My father used to say, the world is filled with educated idiots. And the other one that I always liked was, don't be an education junkie and an application flop.
Yeah.
Gotta get
the whole knowing doing gap.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think this brings us to a good close on the first part of it, and then we'll follow up next week. I'm just going to stop the recording.
All right, that's okay.